Underrated Movies. I'm your guy. I'm your man, Mr. Alton Henry, and today I'm gonna talk to you about another film, V8 VHS 2, from a collaboration of other filmmakers. This is a part two, not necessarily a continuation. This is just another anthology films, short films condensed into a feature-length film, sequel to the original VHS, starring, well, I ain't seen me star for anybody. I'm gonna get a little straight to the point here. This film, I believe, I have to say I like the first one a little bit better, but this one I think it's more straight to the point. You follow the same premise or the same kind of like idea where you have one main story that's investigating a incident or something that deals with videotapes, and the protagonists or the main characters of that story start watching other videotapes that may give off some sort of spiritual presence to them, and after watching each tape, which is also a series of short films, things start to get a little bit weird within that first story, and a similar structure to the first film. And I would have to say the stories here in this particular one are a little bit more inventive, and like I said, they're more straight to the point, which the film is shorter than the predecessor. And there are a few hit or misses here, but I think out of the best short story is probably the one directed by Garth Evans, and which was that? The Safe Haven, which I think that one's going to be notorious. Well, I'm sure it has been notorious. The movie came out back in 2013 now, for its brutality and graphic violence. I can tell you, you're able to, I think, watch this on Tubi. I don't think you can be able to watch it for that long. Where in that story, you're centered on a group of filmmakers wanting to document a religious cult that is about to do some sort of, I guess, special ritual. And I'm gonna tell you right now, the way that things go down in this ritual is very shocking and brutal, and it's gory as hell. And when I tell you, when it gets gory, it gets gory. Like, yeah. And I recently rewatched this, not on DVD. I have the DVD, but on Tubi. It's available on Tubi, I think, now. Things are like the violence in here, the imagery is so graphic. Like, they would add the intent of the edit for the film on Tubi. They would add little like VHS like scratches, vibrations, or something during the moments of the violence to minimize the violence, to minimize the look of it. It's, which, to be honest, I have to. That's a little bit of a disappointing fact if you watch it on Tubi, or maybe on YouTube. Maybe YouTube won't do that. Maybe YouTube would release the uncut version. So that part was a little bit, that's just releasing it on a streaming platform, and then maybe they just thought that story was just too violent and they had to censor some things. But still, I believe you still get the same effect. I mean, it doesn't tour out all the gory violence. I mean, most of it's pretty much the same. But for that specific one, there's a little edit there. And actually, it's actually a very, very scary thought towards the end of that short story. That's probably maybe my second favorite one. I think my number one favorite in the second one is probably the final story, the one that deals with the kids being babysitted by their sister and boyfriend, and then they're invaded by, I think it's one of the best alien invasion things I've seen, and it's scary. That's why it's scary. So when you see these aliens, when you see them, they're tall, they got long fingers, and they resemble the aliens that you would normally see through like documentaries or certain, I guess, predictions of what they're supposed to look like, or what they claim, what we saw, what they look like. They look hideous and monstrous, and the snippets you do see them leaves a memorable impression, to me at least. Those are some scary looking aliens. Then another story I thought was very, very inventive was the zombie story, where you have a main character who gets bitten by a zombie, and through the GoPro you see him acting like a zombie and eating up bodies and pulling out guts and all that. You deliberately see all that, and it gets a little bit graphic for those who are squeamish. This one right here might leave you a very, I would say, aftertaste of watching that story. There's one little aspect about it I really enjoyed, like towards the end of that story, towards the end of it, and it's a moment to where, and it's a little bit of a spoiler, after the main character gets turned and gets ran over, he butt dials his girlfriend, who calls him, and then suddenly his conscience pops up, where he acknowledges, the character acknowledges what he is doing and what's happening, and he commits suicide by getting a shotgun and eating it, which was a very interesting thing to kind of really think about, with the idea of you turn into a zombie and then something happens to you, or like a memory, like just suddenly just snaps you out of this monstrous trance. That was something to really think about with that. I thought that was a good concept for a zombie short. Above all else, I think the other stories are great. I think the weakest story would have to be the story that introduces all the other stories. It does get a little bit mysterious, but again, it plays similar to like the first film, where I don't think it does anything too inventive. Where I think the movie starts to lose a little bit for me, where the idea, where watching these movies, these short cassettes, is supposed to have some sort of trigger effect to you of what's happening in the first story, or supposedly the idea of watching these stories inflict some sort of spiritual entity, which it just didn't make sense to me. But if it was just an idea just to experiment with it, then I was kind of on board with it. But overall, the result of it just didn't really hook me when involved to that concept. All in all, this was a great horror found footage sequel. I highly recommend it for those who love horror and just gory stuff. This is one you can't miss. VHS 2, have you seen it? Comment below, let me know, and let me know what you believe is considered to be one of the most underrated movies you've seen.